Hello, everyone. Hello, hello. Welcome this evening. So nice to have you all here. So great to see people's faces. Uh, so I want to welcome you to this evening's Matters of the Mind session. Such an important topic, I feel, in the world that I live in. I think everyone I know is grappling in some way. And so I'm really excited to have Dr. Susie Langould here today to bring forward her experience and expertise to this topic to bring some good news.
Mhm.
Yes, this is what
Yes.
we were talking about right
Yes.
beforehand.
Yes.
This
Yes.
is
There's
not a
hope.
hopeless
There's
meeting.
hope. Yes. Yes.
So I'll take one moment just to introduce Susie to you all. So Dr. Susie Langoul is the director of Peace Portal Counseling Center, where she serves as the leader, counselor, supervisor, parent consultant, and speaker. She's a registered clinical counselor and also an approved clinical supervisor with the BC Association of Clinical Counselors. Susie's got over 25 years of experience and has worked in private practice, public and independent schools, and with the Ministry of Children and Family Development. Susie has written documents for teachers and clinicians and has served on the BCACC Supervision Committee for 8 years, assisting with the regulation of supervisors, the implementation of supervision of supervisors. Sorry, so it's a lot of
It's
words.
hard. It's a lot to
Some
get
of you will
through.
know what
Yeah.
that means and some won't. Providing opportunities for professional supervision has been a passion of hers, and all as well as everything to do with digital and resilience and community. And so I'm thrilled to have you here, Susie. And before I hand this over, I first want to acknowledge where I'm coming from today. So I'm coming from the lands of the Lekwungen speaking people, known today as the Songhees and the Esquimalt nations. And I invite you, as we introduce the session, you can put in chat where you're coming from as well if you feel like it, because I recognize we're coming from around the province.
Yeah.
And I really do want to, for those of you that don't know, I want to just let you know these Matters of the Mind sessions are an offering that's near and dear to us at the BCACC because we have over 10,000 members, clinical counselors who carry so much experience and expertise in being helpers in the province. And so it's our way of bringing it forward to the people of BC. So, yeah, with that, Susie, I'm going to hand
Hey.
it over to you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks so much, Nikki. Yes, Nikki and I were chatting. I finished my PhD last year, and so I am interested in social media, and my practicum dissertation as well as my dissertation was on social media in some sort of fact. So in some sort of way. So I wanted to share the knowledge. Like instead of all of you going out, why not share some of the things that I have learned with all of you? And as Nikki said, there is some hope. So I'm going to date myself, but when I grew up, the evenings were spent outside. They were playing, especially on like a night like today. And we knew when to come in because the street lights would go off. And then we'd come in, connect as a family, maybe read a book or something like that before we went to bed. And now, if we just pause for a minute and take a moment to think about sort of the present day and how more often than not, at the end of a long day, we're scrolling through social media, and within minutes, we're flooded with images of perfect vacations, people's achievements, flawless appearances. And I also am a mother of three now emerging adults, young adults, and I have, having been that my childhood to present day, I've actually also, throughout the years witnessed the negative effects of social media mental health with clients, with my kids, with their friends, as they're exposed to images of exclusion, comparisons with the perfection of friends, celebrities, even, and then everything in between. And more, and I'm sure some of you here who are counselors, more and more, or even friends, noticing that people are struggling, not because of necessarily what's happening in their lives, although people are struggling with things in their lives, but, because they're comparing themselves to others who have social media images, content, comments. And so this is a prevalent issue. And my whole heart was to try and figure out what are some of the protective factors, like what can protect us from some of these negative impacts. So my practicum dissertation was on secure attachments, and there were characteristic parts of secure attachment, and one of them was the social support, which protected people from the negative impact. And then for my dissertation, I did resilience and social support. So this is where we are. This is what I wanted to share with you, is sort of the impact of social media comparison, and then talk a little bit about the protective factors. Okay, so we're going to have some questions along the way too. When I do these in person, you can sort of chat to the person beside, but Nikki and I talked, and we'll put those in the chat. You can answer or not. I just thought, there's 3 times where you could reflect on those. Whether you take a screenshot or join the chat, feel free to do either. Okay, so 90% of North Americans check their phone before making human connection. And I have to be honest, this has changed because I've done this for like 2 decades now with like parenting and whatnot. And so, when my kids were adolescents, I remember trying so hard to like be the first human connection. So it's just interesting to watch as time has gone by, how now people are checking their phones before actually, saying hello to the people who are in their home. A global report in 2023, which is sort of the last global report, the number of users has increased from 2.8 billion in 2017 to 5.31 billion in 2025, just showing not only its popularity, but also the pervasiveness that's going across age groups, across cultures. I mean, that's more than half of our population, and that's quite an increase in 8 years. 64 approximately, 64% of the world's population spends 2 hours and 34 minutes each day. Now, remember, this is 2023, so it might be more each day on social media platforms. And then adolescents, which my heart is sad about this stats, but they spend approximately 8 hours and 37 minutes. And then I calculated like a typical longevity of 70 years. So that's approximately 6 years and 8 months on social media. And if I'm honest with all of you, I would love to study adolescents. They're just a bit harder to research because you need parents' consent. Anyways, that's a group that we need to care for. Anyways, in North America, 79% of the population uses social media regular. So it is a staggering amount of time. And what it's really doing is reflecting that there's a major shift now in how we interact, how we consume information, and of course, how we compare ourselves. So this was my little one, is how has social media use impacted your life or the lives of those that you care about around you? And maybe what are some of the impacts that you've noticed with social media on your clients? Because we're sort of talking about these ones, but there's actually quite a few. So Nikki's going to put that in the chat. I'm going to keep talking, but if you feel like chatting about that, that's great. Important to reflect on how it's impacting us. So social media, just giving you a tiny bit of a history here. The first social media platform was 6 Degrees in 1997. And initially it was created for 15 to 20-year-olds, and they would email each other, voicemail, message boards. Instant messaging was included in that. And then it was followed by Friendstar in 2001. LinkedIn began in 2002, MySpace 2006. And then really Facebook in 2008 was one of the big, sort of like a TSN turning point is what I want to say. By 2005, 5% of North Americans used at least one of the platforms. And by 2011, 50%. And today we're at 79% using at least one. And So when we're talking about the amount of time on social media platforms, I just want to let you know we're like including LinkedIn, WhatsApp, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, TikTok, and Instagram. In historically, when it was researched, it was actually called social networking sites, but now it's been defined more as social media, and it's broadly defined as a category of communication media that enables social interaction, whether that's with friends, strangers, or global communities. This includes the social networking sites and the platforms that we're talking about. So while social media offers several advantages, like such as staying connected, I'll talk more about those. There's also some significant concerns. And for this particular research that I'm going to talk about, it's emerging adults. So that's 18 to 29-year-olds. And they are one of the heaviest users. Emerging adults and adolescents are the heaviest users and vulnerable to the psychological impacts of its use. Okay, one second here. So what I've done here is when it comes to emerging adults, and I just am sharing with you, I have read so much research. So I put it into 4 different categories: learning, connections, emotions, and one identity. So when we think about social media and the platforms that we're talking about, uh, I'm just going to go through some of the positive and some of the negative. And to be honest with all of you, I really focus on the negative. And so I wanted to share with you the positive, that things that I actually learned while researching this, like such as social media can be like an incredible source of information. And something new that I discovered was that it can assist different learning styles, like visual learners and other ones. You can collaborate, discuss topics in groups. Uh, there's lots of information with social justice as well as current events that we can learn through social media. And then there's lots of research on people who enjoy sharing ideas and opinions. Some of the negatives are that there can be challenges with concentration. Oratory skills can be negatively impacted. I mean, honestly, I've also talked with people about how writing has changed and evolved. Like, I still have love notes from my husband 35 years ago that are long. And as I say to my kids, it's very interesting because the way they interact is text. So that actually, I feel like a bit of a lost art of writing letters to each other, friends of ours, like pen pals that we used to have. So just it might be negative, but also it's just evolving as well, just different ways that people are talking online. Some information online is not true. And so that's a part that can be a challenge of just figuring out what is false information and what is real. Heavy social media use is connected to negative impact on cognitive processes. And so identity, emerging adults, is a time of identity, of developing identity formation. Of course, it doesn't necessarily happen just in emerging adult time, but just that idea was very interesting for me to find out that, you know, quite a few articles, people talked about the social media actually allowed them to be more authentic than they could be when they were just out with people. Some people talked about being able to create identities, having a presence, sharing information, having a voice. Some of the positives were creative new ideas for identity development. And some of the articles talked about feelings of confidence and a sense of belonging that can arise, especially when you are part of different groups on social media platforms. Some of the negative impacts can be an incongruency with identity and the experience of sort of which, I mean, I've experienced that. I'll just speak for myself, of just like the way someone shows up online is different than your experience of them. An innate desire to fit in can create an inauthentic self. right? So sometimes people are trying to fit in, and so they create this identity that isn't really who they are. And when people put out their identity and they're in the identity development, it can be judged and criticized, which can have a negative impact. There can be online pressure and judgment, and there can be a decrease in self-worth that people have. So once again, and I do feel like, I remember when Skype came in many, many years ago, and I just remember how positive. So when I spoke about the secure attachment research that I did, one of the positive impacts or protective impacts, I want to say, was having connections. And so there is this beautiful thing now that, we can connect with people all across the world, really. And so we can keep and our attachment needs, safety, security, and belonging through being connected on social media. Interesting, again, shy individuals talked about how social media was a way that they could connect with others because they were so shy. It was harder in person. Sometimes connecting with others through fun, entertainment, games. And yeah, there are times and articles where when people are part of a group and they're struggling and the group is a supportive group, when they go online, they can really help them get through those challenges. Some of the negative pieces is feedback from others can create feelings of sadness, disappointment. Anonymity can create opportunities for individuals to be critical, hostile, mean, and so like cyberbullying and some of the language and things that happen can be very hostile. Miscommunication can occur when somebody wrote something. I'm sure we've all had those experiences where you write something and it's misinterpreted, or somebody thinks there's a certain tone to it, which it wasn't. I just watched a movie somewhere where it was like all the grandma did all caps. And so it wasn't intended to be all caps, but that was her first time on it. So it came out as like a loud uh, communication. Loneliness when on social media. So when people are spending so much time, there are articles that sort of talk about how people feel lonely. Exclusion from connection. So once again, when people are spending so much time on social media, they're missing opportunities to connect with people. And social media can distract us from human connection. And the emotions. So, in the field, this has been an interesting piece of some of the positive social media use. Articles have shown that can have direct impact on emotions and moods in a positive way. So like entertainment can provide moments of laughter and joy and that's good for us. Likes can create emotions of happiness and excitement. And then once again, social media can be used to regulate negative emotions. This was new for me. And the new part was that a couple of articles that I read talked about how when someone was feeling sad, when they actually looked at something on social media, like a friend's clip or something like that, it would move them out of the negative emotion. Some of the negative pieces with emotions or worries and fears about being judged. Quite a few articles about that. Pressure to stay connected with that concept of keeping up with others. Social comparison theory, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, can create depressing emotions. Exposure to distressing images, that's for me, I get impacted, so I get that. So that can create fear, anxiety. And I'm sure some of you too know that groups with self-harm and suicide, that group mentality can actually exacerbate feelings. So just being aware of all of these positive and negative impacts in those. So I'm going to move on to talk a little bit about some of the streets. So I just wanted to clarify when I talk about psychological well-being, that refers to the mental and emotional aspects of living a fulfilling life. So this includes elements such as a sense of purpose, autonomy, self-acceptance, personal growth, as well as the ability to form meaningful relationships, maintain emotional stability, and live in supportive environments. So in essence, it's just not the absence of mental illness, but also the presence of positive functioning. Whereas mental health is a part of well-being as it reflects the balance between protective factors such as resilience, life satisfaction, and then the risk factors like worry and sadness. So a psychologically well individual is typically able to recognize, manage, and express emotion in constructive ways. So how do these two intersect? Social media use and mental health. And this is where I've done a lot of reading, and there is a great deal of research that is shows the link between social media use and mental health issues, especially anxiety and depression. Those ones, so the more time people spend on social media, the higher levels of anxiety or symptoms of anxiety and depression are. And additionally, some of the research have shown and identified addictive behaviors such as mood changes, increased tolerance, withdrawal, difficulty maintaining offline relationships. So these behaviors parallel some of those seen in substance addictions and highlight the compulsive nature of some of the social media engagement. So the impact isn't one-dimensional, it's highly contextual, and it just really depends on how and why people are using these platforms. So my research really, this one is a lot about the social comparison, so how people compare themselves, social media comparison. And so this is Leon Festinger's, the one it was first proposed by him. And what he suggested was that in the absence of objective benchmarks, people naturally evaluate themselves by comparing themselves to others. And so these comparison can help us form beliefs about ourselves, traits, abilities, and even our sense of worth. And they can also help create our self-concept. So at the core of it is the upward and downward comparisons. Now I'm going to talk like Thomas Willis sort of extended a bit. So he spoke about two types of downward comparisons. So there's a passive downward comparison, and that's when we sort of feel comfortable or kind of boasts our self-image simply when we observe people who are considered worse off. And so it's like the passive, I'd say, just sort of people passively making downward comparisons. And then the active downward comparisons are more harmful, and that's more intentional when people actually are mean or demean in order to feel superior from others. And these often are unconscious strategies, and they're like a protective factor when our self-esteem is feeling vulnerable. And the other one is the upward comparisons. And they're kind of interesting because for some of them, there's different research on this. So part of it would make sense that when you compare yourself upwards, it would tend to, meaning people who have nicer homes than you or bodies that you want, you'd think that you would have lower self-esteem, which is a part of it, especially when people ruminate or dwell on their perceived shortcomings. That has become more relevant in our digital age. And also when we compare upward on platforms, it can create some depressed symptoms. So that's what the research has shown. But the one part that's interesting is like not always is upward causing depression or low self-esteem. There are some situations if someone feels that when they're comparing themselves upward, that it might be attainable, it can actually be motivating. It can offer some hope, some inspiration, self-improvement, particularly if it's encouraging and the person thinks, hey, I might be able to do that. So once again, ultimately, the impact of comparison depends on the context, the mindset, and emotional resiliency. So now we move into social media comparison. And so this is, applying how people compare themselves on social media and its impact on mental health. And that was the big part of the research that I did. So, social media isn't just a tool for connection. It actually also is a mirror, and at time it can be a distorted mirror. So what we see are carefully curated highlight reels of people's success stories, maybe their vacation stories, perfect bodies. Rarely do we see the struggles or the full story, which is actually one of my biggest challenges. This is like, you look at these social media images, and then that person is struggling so hard, but that's not what they reveal, right? So some of the research with the comparisons on social media can either strengthen or damage a person's self-concept, once again, depending on how they're interpreted. But what makes social comparison uniquely powerful is the amplification effect. So we're no longer comparing ourselves just to our peers, as we would have in the olden days when we didn't have this. You're just comparing yourself to the people that you see, right? Actually, we're comparing ourselves to influencers, to celebrities, filtered perfection. And often our algorithm will reinforce these ideas. So whatever we're showing, it'll show you more of what we're engaging it with. Even if it makes us feel worse, the algorithm taps in and it just keeps going. And then that creates an echo chamber of idealized lifestyles. And when we're watching these, it actually increases envy, feelings of envy, inadequacy, low self-worth. So the research is cleared. Upward comparisons on social media are strongly linked to lower self-esteem, body dissatisfaction, anxiety, depression, and reduced life satisfaction. And one of the main reasons why is a contributing factor is the rumination. So it is, as we would understand as counselors, it's just that cycle of repetitive negative thinking that's triggered by these comparisons. So it's not just a fleeting feeling, it can actually affect the mood, identity, and mental health. And so in this way, social media comparison is a psychological process that that can really have implications for mental health. And yeah, that's really one of the key things that I was measuring in this to share with you, particularly in emerging adults. Now, the one thing I did want to say, so we've done the amplification effect. I also took a course that was social media positive psychology. And the really great thing is, like, one of my assignments that I did, just to share with all of you this interesting algorithm echo chambers piece, is that I went and I researched the top positive psychology Instagram, and I put 10 on, and I just did that for 2 weeks. And it was amazing. I just watched how this is great for us with clients and whatnot. It really then was all the positive. So I just want us to know that we can actually use it in positive ways, to affirmations, or provide, instead of the negative rumination, there are ways to use it in a positive way, as it is a psychological process. So I thought, just for this moment, once again, Nikki can write down in the chat there, but I thought you could screenshot this, just take a moment to think about scrolling through Instagram, someone's vacation, body transformation, whatever you're looking at. Just think about, do you feel inspired? Do you feel a bit drained? Maybe you're not even feeling great about your life, but what sort of happens for you as you are scrolling? Okay. So from a big picture perspective, just wanted to share with all of you, social media comparison is related and connected to anxiety and depression in emerging adults. So, as I mentioned to you, what I've been trying to figure out, okay, so if this is really out there, what are ways that we can protect people? So the moderators are like protective factors, right? And so the two that I'll be talking about is resilience. And so when I'm talking about resilience, I'm talking about it's defined as the capacity to adapt positively in the face of adversity. Resilient individuals tend to cope more effectively with the stress and may interpret negative social comparison differently, right? So some studies supported this, and they found that positive emotions and adaptive coping strategies were positively associated with resilience, and that resilience in turn reduced the impact of stress and anxiety. And one meta-analysis found that the trait resilience was moderately negatively correlated with depression and anxiety and positively correlated with well-being. So yeah, resilience can have a, a positive thing. Another protective factor, if you will, social support. So when I talk about this, I'm talking to the emotional and practical resources provided by others. And so it's been shown to buffer psychological distress in various contexts within research. And so also including some online interaction. So there were a couple of articles just on cyberbullying because it can be very challenging, and how schools and families, when they came together, it really helped the well-being of the people who were being bullied. And yeah, I think very few have really studied the moderating roles between social comparison and some of these psychological outcomes of resilience and social support. So that's why I thought it could be a great gap. It is a great gap in literature. So I've sort of shared with you some of the opportunities that social media provides, like opportunities for information sharing, opportunities for social connection, emotional regulation, some of the challenges, heavy screen time, cyberbullying, mental health issues, loneliness, decrease in overall well-being, and then social comparison significantly impacts mental health outcomes on social media. So this is what we were trying to do. We sort of were, even though much of the research focuses on the effects of social media use itself, it doesn't dig deeply into the psychological processes such as social comparison that then could drive the outcomes of an increase in anxiety or depression. And then less is known of whether resilience or social support could be protective. So that was my question. My question was, can resilience and social support protect us against the negative mental health? And I specifically studied anxiety and depression of social comparison or social comparison on social media. So I just sort of created this to give you an idea of just social media. We've got social media comparison does have an impact on mental health, anxiety, and depression. So if we add in resilience or social support, will it moderate the relationship? Will it protect that relationship? Okay, I'm only doing this very fast for anybody who actually is interested in this kind of thing. Just to let you know, we had 194 participants. They were emerging adults in between 18 and 29 who used social media. We use descriptive correlate. The correlation's important. I'm going to talk about that. Reliability. Some of you would like that. Not hierarchical multiple regression analysis is what I did. And then the interaction plots, which I'm going to share with you because it's such a great visual. And the 9 scales used. If you want to know the 9 scales, I'll let you know, but I feel like probably some of you are totally not interested in that. So the results, the correlation results are really important. So what this suggests is that the greater the upward social comparison is associated with an increase in anxiety and depression symptoms, okay? So if you compare yourself, as you increase the comparison, your anxiety and depression increase symptoms. Okay. And then this one, more comparison. So the more you compare on social media, so the correlated is that they're related to each other. This one is the more that you compare, the higher the anxiety, the more comparisons are also linked to higher depression. Okay. So higher resilience weakened the link between social comparison and anxiety, and social support also weakened the link between social comparison and anxiety. So this is how I hope it makes sense to people, but I did want to share with you this, because when I saw this is how I understood it. Okay, so if we think about these light blue people, so there's two of them, okay, the light blue people are low in resilience. They struggle with coping or lack the ability to adapt to situations. So when these people go on social media, Instagram, comparing themselves, they have an increase in anxiety, okay? Similarly, the light blue over here are people low in social support. They don't have many people supporting them. So when they go on social media, scroll Instagram, compare themselves, they also have an increase in anxiety symptoms. So this is robust. Then, if we look at the light green people, so these are the people with the ability to adapt, to cope with adversity, or have higher levels of social support. This is over here. It even went down a bit, the anxiety, but this nullifies the impact of social comparison on mental health, which is actually incredible news. So what that means for all of us is if we sort of work on ourselves or with others with resilience and add in some social support, that is going to protect us from the negative impacts of social comparison on social media. Okay. So the same happened with the depression. It's very similar plots here, right? So the light blue people, low in resilience, struggle with coping, lack the ability to adapt to situations. They're on social media, they scroll, compare themselves, and they have an increase in depression. Okay. Light blue people, same thing. They have less social support, and then they go on and their depression symptoms increase. If we look at the green people, these people are high in resilience and they're able to adapt and cope. And when they go on social media, these people also over here, they've got social support, they've got people to turn to. And when they go and scroll on Instagram, compare themselves, they're not impacted by depression. So it neutralizes the negative effects of social media comparison, which is exciting for us. So some of the key findings here are social media comparison is linked to increase in anxiety and depression symptoms. Upward comparison, so comparing yourself to some people who are better off on social media, increases anxiety and depression. Resilient traits, and these are the resilient traits. I'm going to talk a little bit about them. They moderate the effects of social media comparison, and social support also moderates the effect less strongly, but it still moderates it. And then I just wanted to be distinctive here. So I'm not talking about social media use. That was actually my practicum dissertation, how much time you spend on. It's actually you comparing yourself while you're spending time on it. So it's also an extension of social comparison theory in the online digital world. So here I kind of wrote 2 more questions. How would you know if social media use was a challenge in a client's life? What's your role if you think it is a challenge in their life? So just speaking a little bit into our role here as counselors. So one of the things that I feel like is we do need to accept the fact that social media is a part of our life now, and to be curious about the impact that it's having on our clients. And I do feel like continuing to get educated on issues that are related to social media are important for us as counselors. engaging in conversations regarding the impact of this. Like, part of me being here is because I want to start engaging as counselors of like, hey, social media, it's prevalent, it's really changing and forming, the what's coming into our offices. So I think we need to be talking about, how social media use and social media comparison are impacting mental health. I shared with you the positive, implement the positive, and then help clients build some resilience, include social support and treatment plans, which I'm sure many of you do, but this is another way to just highlight the importance of it. If working with children, conversation with parents about delaying, it's a little bit annoying for me because I shared with you I have my 3 kids who all had different experiences with social media. I just remember thinking, don't bring the phones in the classroom. And then they did. And my third child, that it was like required that he had it in certain classes for like research. And now they're backtracking and now they're taking it all back, at least in our district, they are. So just delaying it and having structured routine limitations around the amount people use, and then make sure clients have time for eating, sleeping, and exercise and social engagement. Like, sleep is very impacted by social media use. There's much research about that. And then when people are on it, they're less likely to go outside and exercise. Eating can become a challenge, and then they're less likely. I shared a little bit about some of the loneliness that happens for people who are like excessively on social media. So resilience, I wanted to chat with you. So this was the Connor Davidson scale. So it was like an 11 item scale, and this is what it measured. So I wanted to share with you, like, when I say resilience, these are the factors that it actually measured. So building and maintaining friendships. So the concept of community, hopeful outlook. I think about gratitude, practicing gratitude, the importance of that. There was one of the items that really talks about personal competence, and that's really like believing in yourself and having tenacity when it's really hard. And so that moves a little bit into knowing the strengths and resources, like us as human beings, and helping our clients find those. And yeah, I want to say like stories are really igniting some of those strengths in their life. Self-care, very important. I just talked about it, like that. Sleep, eating, exercise is a big piece that I think moves into self-care. No, one of the interesting parts is one of them is emotional regulation under pressure. So one of the pieces is I feel like when people are resilient, Dan Siegel talks about sometimes when we're in fight, flight, and freeze, our emotions take over our brain. But what I'm thinking is that people who are resilient are able to really calm their brain down and deal with the negative emotions or any of the emotions under pressure. Tolerance of negative emotions. So being able to be okay with being sad or angry or frustrated, bouncing back from hardships. So just finding situations where, we or our clients can bounce back from hard times, pick yourself back up and keep going. Cognitive flexibilities, well, an interesting one, because I think that we definitely have clients who are rigid, and we have people in our life who have rigid thinking, and so it is that ability to be flexible cognitively. Adaptability to change. I mean, one thing is in life that we're sure of is things are going to change. Look at, I'm here having this conversation about social media. Like, life has changed so much from my playing outside on lovely days to now where we're at. So just being able to adapt to change. And the other one is like being clear under adversity. So just the ability to not be confused, but when adversity hits, you're able to sort of set some realistic goals or be clear on where you need to go. So this is where I want to spend some more time talking to people. But anyways, that's to give you a little bit, okay? And then to help you understand the social support scale, it measured 4 different types of social support, okay? So it was actually quite a big scale. And so it measured emotional support, so feeling cared for, understood, comforted by others online, companionship or belonging, so feeling part of an online community or a group, information support, so receiving advice. That's, yeah, receiving advice. And even some of the research says that the social support is really people giving some resources, guidance, information, and it's seen support like encouragement, validation, helping people move into positive emotions. So those are that's what that scale is measuring. So in conclusion, social media is here. It's here to stay. So grateful to be talking about it. Social media comparison is linked to an increased anxiety, depression symptoms. Resilience and social support emerged as protective factors. That's the great news. It's an extension of the social comparison theory into the digital arena. I really feel like there needs more cultural representation in the research with regards to social media use, and also on specific platforms, like, just one platform in particular. And this provides insight for us, for people who are actually working in the field, that focuses on resilience and support, or at least has that in their head as, okay, this can be a part that can help some of our clients who are struggling. So that's it. That's what I've got here. I said to Nikki, it's 45, it's 47 minutes here. And so I think we said we could open it up if anyone had questions. I can do my best to answer it, or if any thoughts people had. So grateful for the opportunity just to be here with all of you talking about this.
First of all, before anyone, if you have questions, feel free to either put it in the chat or you can raise your hand and unmute yourself. But I want to thank you for that, Susie. There's a couple of things there that really stood out. I mean, that list of resilience is almost just such a great list as a human benchmark to think about what is important, because it's not rocket science.
Right. Yeah.
And so I love that. And another thing early on, just you're really bringing forward the difference of psychological well-being and mental health, because people talk about mental health all the time. And I think it just doesn't get defined. We don't even know what that means at the end of the day sometimes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I really appreciate a lot of other things. But if people have questions, feel free. However you'd like to. You can unmute yourself, you can raise your hand, you can put it in the
Yeah, I'm going to be honest with you, Teddy. More was negative. Like, it was more decreases self-esteem, a life satisfaction. However, I guess I did want to put in less research, but there is research to say that sometimes, and it's really about the person thinking it's attainable. That's, I think, the key thing, right? Like, I think when it's like a celebrity or something like that, that maybe be different than like, oh, hey, it's someone who's working out and I might be able to attain that. That actually motivates them and inspires them. Oh, such a great question of the gender. So the gender in my specific research was very close. I feel like it was 64 women and whatever that is, Matt. I remember the women. And then your other, but there were certain articles that were gendered, like female more than male is what I'd say, but typically it would be all genders with the research. Age group that I did was emerging adults with 18 to 29. But when I spoke about, that's what the main research that I shared with you today would have been 18 to 29. Yeah. I mean, there should be more on adolescents, but I just, yeah, anyhow, you can only do certain amount of things, right?
Okay, I have a couple more questions for you, Susie.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, are there any other protective factors slash moderators that can lessen the negative impacts of social media use?
Right. Like, I mean, that's why the gap is there, right? Is because I didn't really find any truly. No, I just feel like so when I think about the resilience and the social support, I don't even feel like there's enough research out there. I think what I feel like is happening right now is I feel like there's so much showing the negative impact, and that's where I think we need to come around and see, like, are there any other ones
Yeah.
that are helping moderate it?
Yeah.
So not to my knowledge, but I'm going to be honest with you. It's really not to my knowledge. I'm like, did I think about? But I did all this research. So this was the gap.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So another
Great question.
question that tags on to that is, did you find any kind of relationship between resilience and social support?
Great question. No, I didn't do a correlation with that. So no, I didn't do those two together. That's a great question. Probably too complicated if I had done both. Like I'm thinking I did the hierarchical, yeah, but no, I didn't combine the two together. Great question.
So much work to be done,
Well,
right?
it's like anyone who wants to do some
Yeah,
research,
that's right.
there's a great area for you to do this these days. Yes. Maybe if there's 11, we get like 7 of the 11 we could be considered. I don't think we need all of them to be a resilient human being. You don't need to tick everything, but more like if you have a hopeful outlook, that we can do through gratitude. So once we start seeing things kind of, if we really do practice gratitude, you start seeing things in a different way. So even those who are wired negative, and of course, not everybody's going to practice this stuff, but we know enough research, mindfulness, self compassion, these pieces that if we can build some of that in our clients, I feel like I just agree with you. And like, I laughed about the rigid thinking. I mean, some of those are the hardest clients, and it's like trying to get them from the black and white to the gray. But even if we just try, right? It's that sort of what I'm thinking is living in the gray or like living with ambiguity. And yeah, some of them I just agree. Sometimes we're genetic, but there's parts of those that we can help building and maintaining relations. I mean, some types of personalities have a really hard time with that. But I think maybe if they had some of them, not all of them, maybe that could foster resilience. Does that make sense? Sometimes I even think it's the narrative of their story. And is there another narrative that we can sort of bring in? Yeah, there's lots of research on that, on gratitude, mindfulness, self compassion. There's enough out there that it changes our brain. So we can't, that some of our clients won't believe that. I know it, so I'm okay. They can choose to not be a part of that. And then the strengths and resources, I do feel like some don't see it. And so sometimes we can just reflect back some of those stories of strengths or resilience that we see in their lives. I mean, some of the clients who don't see that what they've gone through is like, wow, you are so resilient to be here talking to me, right? Even courage to come in for the anxious who just cry right away because they're just so anxious. It's like, wow, you're so courageous just to be here. So even naming some of those pieces, I feel like when they don't have the language to say that for themselves, because all they've heard is negative, right?
I've got in the comment, awe and wonder can be therapy.
Beautiful. Thank you. Yes, I did. I did a paper on that too. Thank you so much, whoever said that. Totally true. Just stand in the Rocky Mountains somewhere, or like by an ocean. It's like, oh, yes, I
Yeah.
agree.
Well, and I think that that's one of the things is we're so enmeshed in all of this digital these days, we're disconnected from the fact that some of these things, I mean, it can sound so surfacey, self-compassion, mindfulness, but it actually does have an impact.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
We're even going outside, like just in nature and breathing in, during COVID. I'm sure some of you were telling your clients, just go out and breathe the air. Like breathing in oxygen can help us, right? So even little things. I mean, it's spring. There's this awesomeness that like buds come back out after they're dormant for the year, right? It's like, oh wow, there's colors and cherry blossoms. Yes.
Well, I'm seeing that we're at 6:59.
Oh, we did it. Yay.
There's a couple of little questions, but I also want to honor the time that we've uh, kind of set aside here. So I want to thank you, Susie, so much because, as you said, it's not going away. So being able to sort of sink into the conversations and at least figure out one or two ways that we can have it in our lives or build what we need to build is so important. So thank
Yeah.
you for bringing this forward and
Thank
bringing
you.
the conversation. And I want to thank everybody
Yeah.
here
Thank you
for
all for
showing
coming.
up.
Yes,
Uh,
totally.
I hope that you got something, one to two things out of that. And then I hope you honestly all have a really great week.
Yeah. Me too. Enjoy your week. Thank you for coming, everybody. Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.